Hari Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashoda Nandana Vijayana Nandana Yashoda Nandana Vijayana Nandana Yamuna Tira Chari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Abhihari Jaya Radha Madhava Puja Bihari Jaya Gopi Kanavalabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashoda Nandana Rajajana Yashoda Nandana Rajajana Yamuna Tiravana Chari Yamuna Tiravana Chari Jaya Radha Madhava Puja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Puja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashoda Nandana Jananandana Yashoda Nandana Jananandana Yamuna Tira Chari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Abha Navihari Jaya Radha Madhava Puja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashoda Nandana Brajajana Yashoda Nandana Brajajana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Puja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Puja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashoda Nandana Vajjanaranja Yashoda Nandana Vajjanaranja Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Shamishkapada, Paramsapari Dakacharya, Shuddha Shada Sri Srimad, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Shamishkapada, Paramsapari Dakacharya, Shuddha Shada Sri Srimad, Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Nitai Gopamanande Hari Hari Bol. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 19, titled The Island of Jambudvip, text number 13. Idam hi yogeshvara yoga naipunam hiranyagarbo bhagavan jagadayat yadantakale tvayi nirgune mano bhaktya dadhito jita dushkale vara. Idam hi yogeshvara yoga naipunam hiranyagarbo bhagavan jagad dayat yadantakale tvayi nirgune mano bhaktya dadhito shita dush kalevara. Idam hi yogeshvara yoga naipunam hiranyagarbo bhagavan jagadayat yadantakale tvayi nirgune mano bhaktya dadhito jita dushkale vara. Word for word. Idam, this. He, certainly. Yoga Ishvara, O my Lord, master of all mystic power. Yoga Naipunam, the expert process of executing yogic principles. Hiranyagarbha, Lord Brahma, Bhagavan, the most powerful. Jagata, spoke. Yat, which. Yat, which. Antakale, at the time of death. Twai, in you. Nirgune, the transcendence. Mana, the mind. Bhaktya, with a devotional attitude. Darhita, one should place. Uchrita dushkalevara, having given up his identification with the material body. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. O my Lord, master of all mystic yoga, this is the explanation of the yogic process spoken of by Lord Brahma, Hiranyagarbha, who is self-realized. At the time of death, all yogis give up the material body with full detachment, simply by placing their minds at your lotus feet. That is the perfection of yoga. Purport. Srila Madhvacharya says, Yasya samyag bhagavati jnanam bhaktis taivacha nischintas tasya moksha syat sarva papa kirto pitu. For one who very seriously practices devotional service during his lifetime in order to understand the constitutional position of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, liberation from this material world is guaranteed, even if he has previously been addicted to sinful habits. This is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita. Api chet suduracharo bhaje mam ananyabak sadur eva samantavya samyag vyavasito hisa. Even if one commits the most abominable actions, if he is engaged in devotional service, he is to be considered saintly because he is properly situated. The only purpose of life is to be fully absorbed in thoughts of Krishna and his form, pastimes, activities, and qualities. If one is able to think of Krishna in this way 24 hours a day, he is already liberated. Svarupena vyavastiti. Whereas materialists are absorbed in material thoughts and activities, devotees, on the contrary, are always absorbed in thoughts of Krishna and Krishna's activities. Therefore, they are already on the platform of liberation. One has to think of Krishna with full absorption at the time of death. Then he will certainly return home, back to Godhead, without a doubt. Om Agyanatiramandasya Jnanajana Shalkaya Tasmai Militamyena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So in this verse, we hear about the yogis that give up the material body with full detachment and place their minds at the lotus feet of the Lord. And Prabhupada translates this process, or tells this process, is the perfection of yoga. And in the purport, he further elaborates that by giving two verses, one from Bhagavad Gita, one from Madhvacharya, about how if one becomes attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then one is guaranteed liberation from this material world. If one is properly attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, even if previously one is engaged in or addicted to all sorts of sinful habits. You also hear Krishna say something similar in the conclusion of the Gita, where he encourages us to give up all varieties of dharma, of materialistic duty, one way or the other, and to surrender unto him and to gain, and that he will take care of all of the sinful reactions, that we will not have to come back to this material world in order to pay the price for those sinful reactions, or gain the reward for our pious activities. We want one side of the deal, but not the other. I know, maybe for most of us, I would sometimes fall in this category that, we want the rewards of our pious activities, but don't want the results of our sinful activities. I remember a long time ago, before I got initiated, I heard that when you get initiated, your karma is cleared. And I asked a senior devotee, well, is it only the bad karma? Get rid of all the sinful reactions, but I'd kind of like the results of whatever little pious activities that I had. Of course, before coming to Krishna consciousness, pious activities were few and far between, for me at least, because I was extremely fallen. But there's this thought like, oh, I want to hang on to those. And Krishna can take the sinful ones, the sinful reactions, but let me keep the good ones that are coming to me. But but even the good karmas, even the reactions that we want keep are in one sense bad, because they keep us bound to the material world. Whether we have a pair of golden handcuffs, silver handcuffs, or iron handcuffs, you're still bound. The example sometimes given is that in some prison systems, they have basically a hierarchy enforced by the managers of the prison house, where basically if you're a good prisoner, so you have good behavior, then you're a first-class prisoner, where you get all of these sorts of privileges. Able to use the computer, You have a more comfortable cell, etc. Well, if you aren't that good, but you're still not super bad, you might be a second-class prisoner, where you don't have quite as many privileges, but you still have some. And if you're, just causing trouble, you might be a third-class prisoner, uh, that, has no privileges and is very controlled by the guards. But whether one is a first-class prisoner, a second-class prisoner, or a third-class prisoner, one is still in the prison house. One cannot actually have a truly enjoyable position as long as one is a prisoner in the prison, because one is under the punishment energy of the state. And one cannot be happy in that position, materially speaking, in the analogy. The true way to be satisfied is to get out of the prison house altogether. And this is the way also for the actual satisfaction of the living entity. The material world is compared to a prison house. We are all sent here because of our attitudes of wanting to enjoy something other than Krishna. It could be that we want to be Krishna, or that we want to be the center of everything. But I've also heard it explained that simply wanting something other than Krishna is enough to send us from the spiritual world to the material world. That thinking Krishna and something else is enough to let us end up here. And then once we are here, we try to be our own Krishnas. We try to be the center of everything. We try to basically recreate the situation in the spiritual world, but with us at the center rather than Krishna. But of course, that is not our constitutional position. So there is simply suffering. And once the living entity has had enough lifetimes of suffering, it's very rare that the living entity would have it that has come to the material world has only one lifetime. It's the usual case that there's lifetime after lifetime of material activities before the living entity becomes disgusted with the whole enterprise of trying to have material enjoyment. And at that stage, if somebody is fortunate, they might meet a devotee. But there's also every possibility that they might become an impersonalist, that their need for relief from suffering is so great, and they view personhood as the same as suffering, or as the cause of suffering. because many times a lot of the most painful experiences in life come from our connections with other people. Uh, betrayal, uh, for example, and other things, the ways and means of society, uh, the miseries that people have, uh, many times are done most intensely in relationships with other people. One can just look at basically the entire corpus of literature for examples of how this can occur, and history for that matter. So people come to the conclusion that if I want to get rid of suffering, then I need to get rid of personhood. And then they become impersonalists. So on the one hand, they are getting rid of material attachment, which is good. One should become detached from material enjoyment, up to and including the material body. But they do not have knowledge of actually attachment, of that there's a step beyond simply becoming detached, which is attaching ourselves to the lotus feet of Sri Krishna. And this is actually the purpose of life. Prabhupada says in the purport that it is the only purpose of life to be fully absorbed in thoughts of Krishna. So the impersonalist, or the budding impersonalists that we were speaking about, should realize that uh, that there is actually transcendental personality beyond the uh, tribulations of this material world, and that in that personality, in relationship with that personality, actually everything is enjoyable. That even things that are seemingly miserable is actually relishable in the spiritual world. The kind of prototypical example of this is love and separation. In the material world, with people that we are attached to, there's generally enjoyment in meeting and misery in separation. But in the spiritual world, in the vision of the spiritual world as given to us by Lord Chaitanya, there is ecstasy in meeting and ecstasy in separation. Because everything is fully enjoyable for Krishna and in relationship with Krishna. Because that is his constitutional position, is that Krishna is the supreme enjoyer. Even the work of creation, maintenance, and destruction is done by expansions. Actually, the expansions of the expansions of the expansions are the ones that are concerned with such a trivial matter as manifesting the material world, as well as maintaining it and destroying it. So we should make the only purpose of life to be fully absorbed in thoughts of Krishna. And we should not get distracted from this goal. It's easy to have it's easy in our lives to have what could be called analogously with as mission drift. Mission drift describes in an organization where you have it was founded with a certain mission in mind. But over time, the mission statement kind of expands, gets modified, goes to something else. Maybe the original mission is too hard or we don't want to think about it. So we shift to something else. And we should be careful about this in our own lives. What is the purpose of life that we are aiming towards, practically speaking? What are the things that we are spending our time on? It is not that simply because we are devotees, everything that we do is Krishna conscious or devotional service. Unless we are on the liberated stage, unless we are on the pure stage, we are likely having mixed activities, that some of our activities, some of our meditation is on material things, and some are on the transcendental activities of Krishna. But we should strive and always be thinking of how can we shift our focus from material entanglement, material engagement, to engagement with Krishna consciousness. And one way to do that Prabhupada wanted us to set up is transcendental culture. That could also be called Daivi Varnashram. We are, of course, at a farm project, which is supposed to be a launching point for the second half of Prabhupada's movement, of the establishment of Varnashram. Because what is important, for what is one of the most important things for the development of our modes of thinking, of the way that we think and the way that we are most naturally prone to think, is actually culture. And that is what we are trying to build, is a culture based on Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada says in the purport here that materialists are always absorbed in material thoughts and activities. And materialistic culture, what we see as in the general Western culture that is prevalent now, is that in actuality, if one analyzes it in terms of the Bhagavad Gita, there's the thoughts of, I have so much today and more I'll have tomorrow. These people are my enemies and I have defeated them. I'm perfect, powerful, and happy. And all of these descriptions are built on a large scale in the materialistic culture that is pervasive today. And of course, those of you who know Bhagavad Gita will recognize these as the attributes of the demoniac mentality, as described in the Bhagavad Gita. And this mentality has expanded to be an entire culture. And it's like a feedback loop. Those with that mentality influence the culture, and those with and those in that culture are influenced by that mentality. And then is it any surprise that when we interact, when we become engrossed in this demoniac culture, that our mentality becomes demoniac? There's this saying, this quote, I believe it's by Malcolm X, that if you send your kids to Rome, don't be surprised when they come back Roman. Where basically the point is that if we interact, or if we take shelter of, I should say, because total isolation is not possible, nor desirable because we have to preach. But if we take shelter of demoniac culture, then our mentality will also reflect that. So we should, one, in ourselves, try to develop devotional mentality by becoming engrossed in Prabhupada's books, in the chanting of the holy names, in the various celebrations, lifestyle, etc., of the Krishna conscious culture, and work to establish that culture as a parallel alternative to the modern materialistic culture. Because the more and more that we establish that, the easier it will become to be Krishna conscious. It is easier to become Krishna conscious when one is surrounded by a culture of Krishna consciousness, than it is when one is surrounded by a culture of materialism. And once we establish this culture, the second half of Prabhupada's movement, then others who are sincere and actually looking for a more sane way of life will see that, oh, these people are actually living a lifestyle that gives satisfaction rather than one that is based on dissatisfaction, as the modern materialistic culture is. And instead of being those who are sick of such an enjoying attitude will, instead of becoming impersonalists or just frustrated, will actually have a greater chance of taking up this Krishna consciousness movement and perfecting their life. So yes, we should all be very vigilant about aligning our purpose in life, both with our mentality and our actions, with the goal of being fully absorbed in thoughts of Krishna. And in doing that, by our various preaching endeavors, whether that's book distribution, running a preaching center, or establishing Daivivan Ashram, the Krishna conscious culture, we should be very energetic in doing all these things in order to reach as many people as possible. So we have about 15 minutes left. I'll open for comments, questions, etc. Thank you, Yashradev.
Hare Krishna, Kalasuru Prabhu.
Haribol Prabhu.
Thank you for a very nice class.
Thank you.
I am trying to digest all the points here. There were so many good points. I found this class very relatable. You described various conditions, categories of mentality, and I think I fell into a few of those. Let's see, starting with those who would like to mitigate the pangs of material existence by eliminating their bad karma, but still want to enjoy their good karma. And I tell myself that, well, but my intentions are good. You know, I don't want to suffer the results of my impious activities, but I've performed some pious activities, and it would be nice to be able to reap the fruits of those pious activities and then engage those fruits somehow in devotional service. So I have this idea that, you know, if I can somehow have my cake and eat it too, or pick and choose, you know, which categories of reactions I'm going to reap. Yeah, the ideal, of course, is to be equipoised and situated transcendentally beyond the purview of action and reaction. But I just keep thinking that, you know, I expect to come back here again. I don't have a lot of confidence that I'm going back home in this lifetime. I expect to come back, and I think that, well, if I do come back, it would be nice if I could reap some of the fruits of my pious activities, because I've tried to do some things with this idea in mind that I think to myself, it's a good chance you're going to be coming back again. So maybe it would be nice to to have some pious credits to fall back on. So I think, well, if I could do some nice I don't know, I think it probably started when I thought, I'm terrified of the thought of just simply being lost in the material world with no no guiding light, with no idea of what to do and what not to do. Perhaps if I preach Krishna consciousness, if I try to share Krishna consciousness with others, I'll reap the reaction of having the benefit of someone sharing Krishna consciousness with me, and at some point in the future when maybe I'm covered over. And I don't know, it was an idea that came to me as a very young devotee, to Bhakti. I was thinking like that. But I think it began the roots of a mentality that I'm thinking now, probably really needs to be uprooted. But but it's still there. I think, well, if I could do some service for the cows, perhaps I'll have some, some pious results. And I'm really, really attached to being able to do some service by making contributions of Lakshmi to fund various projects. It's really nice to be able to do that. I've been poor at times and I've been wealthy at times, and of the two, I can't help thinking that I prefer being wealthy to being poor. Uh, um, and it just seems to provide a lot of opportunity for service. Um, I don't spend the money on myself. A lot of money comes my way, and I try to engage it all in Christian service, and it's very gratifying. I want to think in a transcendental way that I want to believe that it's actually a transcendental taste that I've acquired for rendering that service in that way, detached from the fruits of the activity. But I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. And there is an intoxicating effect to having wealth. It does provide a sense of security, which is false. It's a mundane sense of security. You think that whatever the material nature throws at me, I have the means to deal with it. I can cope somehow or other because I have the resources to be able to make that happen. And so it becomes actually an impediment to progress. You become encouraged to take shelter of the material nature rather than the spiritual nature, rather than devotional service itself, rather than Krishna's lotus feet. I'm taking shelter of some material resources, and trying to enjoy a sense of security in that way. But there is no security within the scope of material nature. The only real shelter, of course, is at Krishna's lotus feet in devotional service. So it becomes an anartha, and so your discussion of this has encouraged me to focus more minutely on the real problem of trying to purify my consciousness, my intentions, and to take shelter actually of Krishna himself, and not necessarily without making the mistake of becoming distracted by the resources. There's a lot of pitfalls. There's so many ways to be distracted, and I seem to find all of them. That is my specific superpower. I have the capacity to find all the pitfalls in Krishna consciousness and exploit them maximally. I learned the hard way. So anyway, that's one of the thoughts that your class inspired in me. I also of the different categories of people who are attracted to Krishna consciousness. A big category, of course, is those who are looking for relief from material suffering, and I'm sure I fit squarely into that category. A little bit of some other categories. It's a blend, an eclectic mix, but largely, I'm just sick and tired of suffering, and so I've lost track of my thoughts. Having another senior moment here. I did have something I wanted to say, but I can't remember what it was. Anyway, you touched on this point about the impersonalists, and that absolutely was my experience. That I've suffered in all kinds of ways, including lots of physical pain from accidents and various things, but But by far the worst pain that I've had to endure was associated with relationships with people and um, or even not in some cases not directly people or a person, but organizations. Having to deal with taxes, for example, is a major headache for me, and has tormented me throughout much of my life. Um, there's just a host of different ways, but lots of unpleasant events in the course of dealing with people, and so you become conditioned by these experiences, and the result is that I gradually adopted a mentality of just simply feeling that yeah, I just don't like people. I don't like relationships. I don't want anything to do with any of this. It's just miserable. It's just a source of so much trouble and misery. So there was a stage in my early life when I was very attracted to the impersonalist conception of liberation. I just wanted to escape from all of it, and it took some effort on the part of some compassionate devotees to help me to understand that that's not really what I want, and that there is a superior solution. Still trying to purify myself of the conditioning of. I'm sure it's not just the suffering in this lifetime, but lifetimes of suffering, and I may not have conscious awareness of some of the events of past lives that have contributed to that conditioning, but the impressions are nonetheless buried there in the subtle body, and it manifests in various ways. So that's there. So much to work on, but happily, um, all of it can be addressed easily by the one very simple process of just chanting Hare Krishna. We don't have to try to individually deal with so many different things. Srila Prabhupada described a process, the process of Krishna consciousness as being like the action of a blacksmith, as opposed to the action of the goldsmith. The goldsmith affects minute little changes in an item that he's working on with a tiny hammer, a little tap here, a little tap there, making minute little changes to create some perhaps a piece of jewelry in some gold, a ring or a pendant or whatever it may be. The blacksmith, on the other hand, in one fell swoop with one colossal blow of his hammer, he affects big changes. And he compared Krishna consciousness to that approach. We don't try to affect minute changes to so many different aspects of our life individually, but by the single stroke of devotional service, so many smaller things are automatically addressed. We accomplish a great deal by just that one stroke. Anyway, that was the example Srila Prabhupada would use, the blacksmith. So we said that our approach is the blacksmith approach, and when I first heard that very early in my devotional life, it had a big impact on me. That just clicked for me. It made a lot of sense. I was able to, by the association of devotees, I was able to understand the practicality of Krishna consciousness and devotional service. I also appreciate your discussion of the cultivation of a culture of Krishna consciousness. And this, of course, is one of Srila Prabhupada's very great contributions to human society and the world. He, at least within ISKCON, he reestablished a culture of Krishna consciousness, emphasizing the importance of festivals, of bringing devotees together to take darshan of the deities, to chant for the pleasure of the deities, honoring the deities prasad, and discussing topics of Krishna consciousness, rendering service in various ways, discussing and strategizing how we shall propagate Krishna consciousness, an elaborate culture. And it began, of course, not with Srila Prabhupada, but Srila Prabhupada reestablished this and spread it widely throughout the world. We have a Vaishnav calendar full of events, different appearances, disappearances of significant devotees and acharyas in our line of succession, different events in the life of Krishna and his various avatars, all different ways in which we can remember Krishna and progress in spiritual life. Not that there is a dichotomy between our day-to-day life and the practice of Krishna consciousness, but the two become finally enmeshed and merged together, such that our entire life gradually becomes one of Krishna consciousness. Not that there's any separation between the two. It's a means by which we can be Krishna conscious all the time in every situation. It's almost impossible for impersonalists to try to do such a thing, or yogis who have to separate themselves from society, taking shelter in the forest or the mountains, someplace where there are no distractions, where there are no people to divert their attention from their meditation. We don't require any of that. We can be in the midst of teeming metropolis, and the situation actually fosters Krishna consciousness for us rather than becoming a diversion. We see so many opportunities for devotional service, so many opportunities for preaching Krishna consciousness, all kinds of opportunities for service come flying at us from all directions, and easy. Once we've been trained properly, it becomes very easy to remain always Krishna conscious. And in any situation, there's just a million ways to remember Krishna in all kinds of circumstances. It's a wonderful feature that is unique to Krishna consciousness, and you don't find this in Ashtanga yoga or any other process. So very proud to go for this age, and very easy to execute. It's just precisely what we need. So we've gone past 8 o'clock, and I'll stop there. Thank you again, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu, for your comments as always. They're always very insightful. Here we are. We have -3 minutes left, so I guess I'll end here. So, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.